Ah, Savannah, Wawanichiwawa. Good morning. I don't know why you listen to me. You should probably stop. Let's get into it. Number 8. We're in book 10. Number 8. Epithets for yourself. Right into the cheery stuff. Epithets for yourself. Upright, modest, straightforward, sane, cooperative, disinterested. Try not to exchange them for others. And if you should forfeit them, set about getting them back. Keep in mind that sanity means understanding things, each individual thing, for what they are, and not losing the thread. And cooperation means accepting what nature assigns you, accepting it willingly. And disinterest means that the intelligence should rise above the movements of the flesh, the rough and the smooth alike. Should rise above fame, above death, and everything like them. If you maintain your claim to these epithets, without caring if others apply them to you or not, you'll become a new person, living a new life. To keep on being the person that you've been, to keep being mauled and degraded by the life you're living, is to be devoid of sense and much too fond of life. Like those animal fighters at the games, torn half to pieces, covered in blood and gore, and still pleading to be held over till tomorrow, to be bitten and clawed again. Set sail then with this handful of epithets to guide you, and steer a steady course if you can, like an emigrant to the islands of the blessed. And if you feel yourself adrift, as if you've lost control, then hope for the best and put in somewhere where you can regain it. Or leave life altogether, not in anger, but matter-of-factly, straightforwardly, without arrogance, in the knowledge that you've at least done that much with your life. And as you try to keep these epithets in mind, it will help you a great deal to keep the gods in mind as well. That they want is not flattery, but for rational things to be like them. What they want is not flattery, but for rational things to be like them. For figs to do what figs were meant to do, and dogs and bees and people. I wonder if it's because, if there's anybody old listening to this, if you consider yourself to be an old person, as you get closer to the end of your life, do thoughts like these seem more reasonable or useful? Like, where you're just sort of matter-of-factly, straightforwardly, without arrogance, in the knowledge that you've at least done that much with your life, ready to meet the end? Does this make more sense towards the end of life than it does to me right now? Maybe that's what this is, because I'm pretty sure he's much closer to the end of his life at the time of writing this. I'm just trying to figure it out. Trying to figure out why somebody would be so stoic about dying. Like it would be easier to talk. It would be easier to devalue. You would have a bias. You'd have a reason to sort of tell yourself that living longer isn't valuable if you're about to not be able to live much longer, I guess is what I'm thinking. Number 9. Oh, that reminds me. I think I just announced this is relevant to these morning read times. This audience specifically. Let me pull this up so I get the date correct. I invited this guest on the show just for you guys and me, mainly, because we're doing these morning studies of Stoicism. May 21, Donald Robertson, a Stoic expert, will be on Disenthrall to talk through some things. So we're going to go through all the good stuff in Stoicism, and then I'm going to attempt to challenge him on some of the stuff that you've heard me object to over this past month of reading the Stoics. So make sure to not miss that episode, and be in the comments too, so that you can ask questions if you have any. Okay. Anyway, back to the book. Number 9. Operatics, combat and confusion, sloth and servility. Every day they blot out those sacred principles of yours which you daydream thoughtlessly about or just let slide. Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm not letting him slide over operatics, combat, and confusion, but there's been a couple of my to-do items that I let slide more often than not. And that's not good. Anyway, your actions and perceptions need to aim at accomplishing practical ends, at the exercise of thought, at maintaining a confidence founded on understanding, an unobtrusive confidence hidden in plain sight. When will you let yourself enjoy straightforwardness, seriousness, or understanding individual things, their nature and substance, their place in the world, their lifespan, their composition, who can possess them, whose they are to give and to receive? 10. Spiders are proud of catching flies, men of catching hares, fish in a net, boars, bears, Samaritans. Wait, no, Sarmatians. Criminal psychology. 11. How they all change into one another. Acquire the ability to see that. Apply it constantly. Use it to train yourself. Nothing is as conducive to spiritual growth. 11a. He has stripped away his body, and realizing that at some point soon he will have to abandon mankind and leave all this behind, has dedicated himself to serving justice in all he does and nature in all that happens. What people say or think about him, or how they treat him, isn't something he worries about. Only these two questions. Is what he's doing now the right thing to be doing? Does he accept and welcome what he's been assigned? He has stripped away all other occupations, all other tasks. He wants only to travel a straight path to God by way of law. 12. Why all this guesswork? You can see what needs to be done. If you can see the road, follow it, cheerfully, without turning back. If not, hold up and get the best advice you can. If anything gets in the way, forge on ahead, making good use of what you have on hand, sticking to what seems right. The best goal to achieve and the one we fall short of when we fail. 12a. To follow the Logos in all things is to be relaxed and energetic, joyful and serious at once. 13. When you wake up, ask yourself, does it make any difference to you if other people blame you for doing what's right? It makes no difference. Have you forgotten what the people who are so vociferous in praise or blame of others are like as they sleep and eat? Forgotten their behavior, their fears, their desires, their thefts and depredations? Not physical ones, but those committed by what should be highest in them? What creates when it chooses loyalty, humility, truth, order, and well-being? 14. Nature gives and nature takes away. Anyone with sense and humility will tell her, quote, give and take as you please, not out of defiance, but out of obedience and goodwill. No. If we're going to talk to nature as if it exists, we fight to improve our lives beyond what nature attempts to allow us. That's science and science. That's every invention ever, is us attempting to subjugate nature to improve our lives and lifespans and quality of life and defeat nature's diseases. 15. Only a short time left. Live as if you were alone, out in the wilderness. No difference between here and there. The city that you live in is the world. Let people see someone living naturally and understand what that means. Let them kill him if they can't stand it, better than living like this. 16. To stop talking about what the good man is like and just be one. 17. Continual awareness of all time and space, of the size and life span of things around us. A grape seed in infinite space. A half twist of a corkscrew against eternity. 18. Bear in mind that everything that exists is already fraying at the edges and, in transition, subject to fragmentation and to rot, or that everything was born to die. 19. how they act when they eat and sleep and mate and defecate and all the rest. Then when they order and exult or rage and thunder from on high. And yet, just consider the things they submitted to a moment ago and the reasons for it, and the things they'll submit to again before very long. 20. Each of us needs what nature gives us when nature gives it. 21. The earth knows longing for the rain, the sky knows longing, and the world longs to create what will come to be. I tell it, I share your longing. And isn't that what we mean by inclined to happen? 22. Possibilities. 1. To keep on living. You should be used to it by now. 2. To end it. It was your choice after all. 3. To die having met your obligations. Those are the only options. Reason for optimism. Reason for optimism. Why is that a reason for optimism? To keep on living, you should be used to it by now. Like, what a way to look at life. You should be used to it by now. It shouldn't be so bad. You should be used to it. 2, to end it. It was your choice after all. Oh, so if you choose to end it, it's not a big deal because, it was your choice. And 3, to die having met your obligations. Those are the only options. Reason for optimism. Jesus. 23. Keep always before you that this is no different from an empty field, and the things in it are the same as on a mountaintop, on the seashore, wherever. Plato gets to the heart of it, fencing a sheepfold in the mountains and milking goats or sheep. 24. My mind, what is it? What am I making of it? What am I using it for? Is it empty of thought? Isolated and torn loose from those around it? Melted into flesh and blended with it so that it shares its urges? 25. When a slave runs away from his master, we call him a fugitive slave. But the law of nature is a master too, and to break it is to become a fugitive. To feel grief, anger. I don't know why you'd feel... Well, I guess if you think a slave can be obligated to his master, then you could think you are obligated to some non-existent concept called nature. Or non-agent concept, not non-existent. To feel grief, anger, or fear is to try to escape from something decreed by the ruler of all things, now or in the past or in the future. And that ruler is law, which governs what happens to each of us. To feel grief or anger or fear is to become a fugitive from justice. 26. He deposits his sperm in leaves, and then a force not his takes it and goes to work and creates a child. This from that? Or, he pours food down his throat, and then a force not his takes it and creates sensations, desires, daily life, physical strength, and so much else besides. To look at these things going on silently and see the force that drives them, as we see the force that pushes things and pulls them, not with our eyes, but just as clearly. 27. To bear in mind constantly that all of this has happened before and will happen again, the same plot from beginning to end, the identical staging. Produce them in your mind, as you know them from experience or from history. The court of Hadrian, of Antoninus, the courts of Philip, Alexander, Croesus, all just the same, only the people different. 28. People who feel hurt and resentment, picture them as the pig at the sacrifice, kicking and squealing all the way, like the man alone in his bed, silently weeping over the chains that bind us, that everything has to submit, but only rational beings can do so voluntarily. 29. Stop whatever you're doing for a moment and ask yourself, am I afraid of death because I won't be able to do this anymore? 30. When faced with people's bad behavior, turn around and ask when you have acted like that. Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. When faced with people's bad behavior, turn around and ask when you have acted like that. When you saw money as a good or pleasure or social position. Your anger will subside as soon as you recognize that they acted under compulsion. What else could they do? or remove the compulsion if you can. 31. When you look at Satyron, see Socraticus or Eutyches or Hymen. When you look at Euphrates, see... Okay, I'm not reading all these insane words that we don't know anything about. When you look at... Yeah. When you look at yourself, it ends with... So I guess he's listing a lot of emperors. When you look at this one, see this one, or this one. When you look at Euphrates, see this one or this one. When you look at this one, see that one. When you look at Xenophon, see Crito or Severus. When you look at yourself, see any of the emperors. And the same with everyone else. Then let it hit you. Where are they now? Nowhere, or wherever. That way you'll see human life for what it is. Smoke. Nothing. Especially when you recall that once things alter, they cease to exist through all the endless years to come. Then why so much turmoil? To live your brief life rightly, isn't that enough? The raw material you're missing, the opportunities. What is any of this but training? Training for your logos. In life observed accurately, scientifically. So keep at it until it's fully digested. As a strong stomach digests whatever it eats. As a blazing fire takes whatever you throw on it and makes it light and flame. Okay. Oh, yeah. So I've been reading so many of these books, and I've actually been approached by another author that I won't disclose yet to kind of parse through and review his work on a book that he's writing and a project he's attempting to start soon in an attempt to actually create a functional structure that could operate in a free society absent government coercion. So this is the third sort of book that I will have read. The second time I've sort of been approached recently to parse through or think through someone's structure for a free society. There's been like a burst of new thought in the area, or at least new attempts in the area. And that's really, really cool. And a lot of people, not a lot of people, some anarchist types specifically, just get such a bad feeling about systems because every system that they've ever been subjected to has been coercive and involuntary, myself included. So it's been really sort of a challenging, growing experience to hold myself open-minded enough while reading and examining these systems. Like we did private property. What was it? Private Property Society Theory recently. I read that here. And then I'm rereading More Equal Animals on the Let's Read series right now. Kind of really going at that one hard. Giving it the full sort of respect of my intellect and attempts to break it. Or show it invalid in some way. And then we have another one. I'll have another one coming up that could also be promising. Part of the issue, I guess, what did I write down? Let me remind myself of what I wanted to think about today. What type of community would you join? Would you join? That's what it is. Like, I spend so much time like railing against all of the involuntary options for what group of people I would want to be a part of, and fighting to just be myself. I'm trying to be myself. I want to be myself. I want to be my own. I want to at least have the capability to be on my own, and that's been denied to me. So it's easy for us to not have ever really spent any time considering for ourselves, well, okay, let's assume that all this coercive, immoral garbage goes away. What type of community would you want to join? Assume you were free. Assume you no longer had to fight for your liberty. What would you want? What sort of relationship or structure would you want? You're not going to live a very happy life solo. Even though that's what we're trying to, like, we're fighting for our right to return to being solo right now, to have our agency return to being solo. And I think we focus so much on that we forget that, you know, if we win and become free, we won't want to be solo. We won't want to be I mean, some of you might have gone to the extreme, and you might have, an entire fully functioning farm, but even you, I bet, still have to buy animal feed from somewhere. Like, I'm sure that you still need some relationships with some other humans. So even people that have gone that far to become self-sufficient, I'm pretty sure, like, you would have to work from the time you woke up to the time you went to sleep on nothing but survival and food and shelter and stuff like that to be totally without need of any other human. And what a waste of a human lifespan that would be. Like, if we can just find a way to work together in a free way without coercing each other, then we can regain the insane productivity advantages of specialization of labor. Like, let one person get really good at making animal feed, for example, and another person could get really good at the cattle driving, or whatever you call it. and then we trade behind that. But all of those things, like specialization of labor, trade, all of that comes out of voluntary cooperation. It should come out of voluntary cooperation, voluntary trade. You're going to need a common denominator to serve as money or currency to enable that trade. All of that requires something. If it's a spectrum of something, right? So, like, on one hand, it's like a. This is kind of way off topic for these morning think times, isn't it? On one side of that spectrum, it's I guess I'll end it quickly. On one side of that spectrum, it would just be like an ad hoc relationship by relationship sort of contract thing, right? So, like, you'll have one type of relationship and dispute resolution process for your cattle feed supplier, and you'll have another contract and another entirely different dispute resolution relationship with this website designer, for example. But that would be like the least efficient version of this. And then people are going to want to have somebody specialize in dispute resolution, which means you're going to have competing dispute resolution organizations that will gather people together under a single framework that they all like for dispute resolution, for example. What I'm trying to say, and then I'll stop for today. This is probably a good disenthrall show, actually, is let's assume for a moment that we are in a free society. There's no coercion. Okay, that's a starting point, not a finish line. The starting point is, okay, now what? How do we want to organize between each other? What types of structures do we think would work best? Do we want to try? What type of structure would you want to try for your relationships? Have you thought about it? It might be useful. It might make us able to actually work towards something rather than merely away from something. And that's why I'm really spending time reading and working through these books, like More Equal Animals, and another one that we'll have coming up afterwards. And that's what I'm going to think about today. Like, what would I want to live under? Not under, that's the wrong word. What system would I want to be a part of voluntarily? What system would I be happy being a part of? That's what I'm going to think about today. Have a great day, guys.